You just have to keep going. You have to want it enough to wake up tomorrow and do the same thing over.
This was me being a hustler.
The only way that I've gotten to this point in my life is to try to treat people the way I want to be treated.
Welcome to Ground Zero Growth with your host, Sam Sapp, owner of Lockbon.
Hey, everybody, and thanks for joining us. I'm joined today with my guest, Suyoung Cha, financial advisor at BSG Advisors. How are you doing today, Suyoung?
I'm doing great. It's Friday. We made it. My daughter's been sick, but last night the whole family got some sleep. Thank the Lord. So yeah, today's a really, really good day for me.
That's a fantastic day because you've got a little one. So anytime you can get sleep, right? I mean, that's a huge thing, isn't it?
That is a luxury.
I don't think we realize how much luxury sleep is till you have a little infant there. And oh boy, me and my wife have never loved sleep more.
I know, right? You know, a bunch of people, like when we first got pregnant and announced it, everybody was like, hey, Suyoung, get all the sleep you can now because you won't be able to later. And I realized that now that was the wrong advice. What they should have told me was start training yourself for no sleep. So stop sleeping today so that you can start training yourself and get ready for when you have the kid, not overindulge in sleep and then crash later.
I think I did have one person suggest that. I don't know how much I followed that, but I did. It excused the days where I woke up unnaturally early or, you know what I mean? So,
right.
And I'm sure you can respect this. If I'm honest, though, I don't even know what you call it, like parent brain. There's almost like this PTSD period where if you were to ask me exactly what happened in the first 6 months,
I
can remember pieces.
Yeah.
But not like in detail.
Now we have the smartphone, right? So I have a ton of pictures and videos. I just look at them like, I do not remember when this was. Like, I took it. It's on my phone, but I have no idea when this happened. So yes, I completely empathize with that statement. The first 6 months, I'm like, where was I?
So let's start with what are you doing at BSG Advisors? Let's kind of help us understand where you're at now so we can kind of rewind the clock and how did you get here?
Yeah, so in July of 2023, we moved to Kansas City. And we moved to Kansas City because my wife, who's a physician now, graduated med school. And when you graduate med school, they tell you where to go. There's this whole, closed door, closed ballot, algorithmic thing. So we had absolutely no idea and that we were going to land in Kansas City. So essentially, I had to open up a second location. I had no contacts in Kansas City, no family. So that's really what I've been doing for the last 1.5 years, starting a second location up, starting to build relationships, and really getting, myself connected with the right people to be able to serve them. Now, what I do as a business is offer comprehensive, holistic financial planning. So, there's that old saying, teach people how to fish and you'll feed them for a lifetime. Feed them fish and you only feed them for a day. I really, really take that to heart. So when I say comprehensive, I mean comprehensive financial planning. We do not leave any stone unturned. And I present all the answers, all the findings to my clients up front. And then if they like the answers, they have two choices. They can just they can just go and do it themselves, or they can say, oh, you know what, I really appreciate the answers. I really appreciate the education. Suyoung, would you be willing to help me with some of these action items as well? And I say, of course. And that's a very powerful way, in my opinion, to build a relationship with somebody. Because, when I worked for a corporate broker, I almost had to leave clients in the dark to keep them dependent on me so that they'll need me. And that making clients need me was the way to retain somebody. Now I have the complete opposite, where I'll give them all the answers, and if they want to outsource the work to me, they can. And I've empowered them to make the decision to want a relationship with Young and BSG advisors and not necessarily need one.
Well, it's interesting because I'm realizing how much you've kind of enabled a fun conversation, because there was a podcast that I listened to early on that was financially led, and they went over questions like, well, it started with where retirement comes from, basically, and I didn't realize the background behind retirement, and then it was like, do you really want, like, do you even like golf? And when I thought about it, it was kind of like, I don't know if I do. I don't know if I'm the type of person that could, not to say that, but I don't know if I'm the type of person that can golf until I die after 65. And then, so then that really got me to thinking. And then it's kind of like, and then he talked about what a 401k was built for and why it was built. And so to loop around, it's kind of like, how many people out there haven't really had a financial plan? At best, maybe they have a 401k that their business kind of put in front of them, and they're like, they just opted into it. But at worst, may not even have that. And it's like, we're planning to retire at 65. Well, with what? And why? Is that really what you want to do? And so I agree with you. I think it's a pretty powerful thing, because I think in some cases, wealth advisors are almost just kind of enabling that traditional dream of retire at 65. But it's also like, why? Why are we retiring at 65?
Yeah. So, yes, you said a lot there, and it's got also my brain thinking. So I am a life first, then the money second kind of person. I think most people logically, they start with the money and they go, okay, this is how much I've got. This is how much I'm making. This is how much I'm projected to make. What can I get out of it? And what that means is they almost kind of subconsciously settle. What I prefer people to do, and what I kind of challenge them to do, is, hey, tell me about the life you want to have, and then let's make the money fit. That way, it's an enjoyable process, and it answers this thing called the dream. So when it's like, when you said, hey, I don't even like golf, what is all this for? Well, don't worry about that. Tell me your dream. And the dream isn't even itself that important, because what makes you happy is the pursuit of the dream. So it can be as far-fetched as people want. It can be just, you just need to have something to dream and chase it. So so the whole cookie cutter model of, hey, let's work at a corporate job forever, and let's clock away money in the S&P 500, and then at 65, I'll retire. And then what? A lot of people have that feeling. A lot of people get that feeling. But if you start with the dream and then try to make the money and the timeline fit, it's very purpose-driven, and people have a purpose in their life, and nobody gets that, oh, now what kind of feeling.
Well, and I think that scales. So we had John Christensen on the podcast, and he does kind of a similar sort of thing, but at $20 million and up. And he was saying, he said, these are multiple pages of a balance sheet. And he's like, and then he was talking about different level of complexities at that range. And I was, of course, like, well, what is a different level of complexity? It's like, well, normally these folks have multiple houses, investment properties, and they're all in their own independent business name. And so you've got to like collect all that and organize it. And what he talked about was a similar sort of thing where it's like, it gets very intimate discussing the dream of the family.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, all your decisions are going to be filtered through that lens. And to your point, I don't even know if he used the word dream, but it was like, what matters to you? Because that's gonna dictate what charitable organizations you're contributing to. That's gonna help shed light to did you know you're funneling all this money over here and you didn't even realize it? And it's like, well, that doesn't align at all with. And so I think to your point that not only is a huge driving factor, it's a factor that at any layer is important.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note of dreams, let's kind of rewind the clock a little bit now and go back to kind of the high school. You know, you're in high school and you're obviously not in Kansas City. And I feel like or I assume, unless you came back, but you didn't indicate that. So I feel like a lot, I personally, the reason I pick high school is because I feel like that's when external influence as to dreams is at its peak. Like, this is the period where it's like, Suyoung, you're going off to college, right? Are you going to go off to college? And what are you going to go off to college for? Who do you want to be when you grow up, Suyoung? What's that first dream?
Oh, man. So high school, now you triggered my PTSD. So high school, I had a ton of external forces, obviously, and all of them were incredibly conflicting. So, I'm Korean, grew up in a Korean family. My family immigrated from Korea to Minnesota when I was 7 years old. So I grew up in Minnesota. And Minnesota is a lot more diverse today, but back then it was not diverse at all. So at my high school, I went to a high school of 1,000 different kids. Excuse me. There were 3 not white kids in that high school. Me, my little brother, so that's 2 out of the 3, and then an African-American student. And also it was an extremely prestigious Catholic high school. It costs, $15K a year. So my parents were shilling out $30K a year, putting me and my brother through that school. So not only was it this kind of white school, it was elite families with a ton of money. And really, what it did was it created this bubble. So I was trying to become this rich white person at school, and then I would go home, and it would be like, oh, I got to fit into the traditional Korean house. And when you grow up Korean or Asian in general, you get 2 choices in profession. And stereotypically, it's the doctor and the lawyer. And if you're very, very, very lucky, you can get a 3rd choice, which is the engineer. And my father was an engineer. So those were the 3, careers that were laid out for me at home. And then at school, it was all about like starting your own business, becoming an executive, because that was the kind of professions the families in that school had. But business is a incredibly terrifying concept to an Asian household. It's like if you kind of think about the Asian culture, it's all about doing what the safe thing is. It's about grinding, and having something guaranteed. There's nothing guaranteed in business. So any dream of business that I had in high school was immediately squashed as soon as I got home. So I was just in this tornado of all these external forces. So
I feel like,
go ahead, yeah.
I if you don't mind, I really don't want to cut you off. That's the last thing I want to do. But I am curious, because I also feel like the Asian culture in particular doesn't have as much. I mean, to your point about business entrepreneurship, I mean, in my mind, the business owners have to come from somewhere. But there's a very, I really wish I had a better word for it than what I'm coming up with, which is a authoritarian, respectful. There's a very like, I go to work for this business, from my limited understanding. I go to work for this business, and I've submitted myself to the powers and authority that be, and I'm going to work here for 20 years. And, I saw a clip the other day that said in Japan, if you want to quit, you can literally hire somebody else to quit for you, because they grill you to the nines, and they're like, why are you quitting? And how would you do this? And what disgrace that you would leave this company. We need it in writing, and you will have to present to your peers why you are quitting. and I obviously there's going to be different cultures in there, but that's why is that, and where do those business owners come from?
So that's a great question. So the Asian culture, in a nutshell, is incredibly performance based. Your performance determines your worth. So, kind of going back to your story, when you go and say, I'm going to quit my job, it's like saying, I am choosing to destroy my performance and my own worth. So it's like, it just boggles their mind. Like, why would you choose to do that? And then the businesses, I don't really have the answer to that because I didn't grow up in Korea, but a lot of the massive businesses in Korea are family run. So it's almost like this thing like, oh, those are the rulers. That's like the ruling family. If you look at Korea's biggest company, Samsung, it was started by a guy, and the first product that Samsung ever sold, fun fact, can you guess what it is, Sam? The first product that Samsung ever sold
I have no idea. I'm
is a
really
bag of
struggling here.
rice.
Okay.
So Samsung's first product was bag of rice. They used to be a farming company. And then they grew and grew, and then now they've become this incredible electronic company, right? So if you look
really
at
far back there, so you're really you're not kidding. So it's almost like an unofficial class system a little bit, kind of.
almost. So the guy that started Samsung as the farming company, and then you look at him, and then you look at every CEO after that, it's the son of the previous CEO. So Samsung is like a fifth, sixth generation company where the son has always took over the father, because that's another Asian culture thing. And in the West or in America, that's unheard of, right? When
It's like polar opposite. Like, fun fact from A Millionaire Next Door, wealth doesn't typically survive the third generation.
No, it really does not. Most family-run businesses do go out of business because they never bring in the external input. But that's it, and it's strange. I would love to learn more why it works in Korea, but many of the CEOs, the next CEO is their child. So it's almost looked at as like, oh, businesses are done by that ruling class or this almost royalty family over there, but you are not royalty. So you need to grind.
Well, and if you think of accountants, attorneys, and I mean these roles that you're kind of describing, engineers, these are typically like the confidant to that position, right? To that business owner. Like I told, there was an accountant we had on this is maybe my personal opinion now that I am a business owner, but I feel like there's like 2 or 3 roles you definitely need, and 2 of them are going to be accountant and attorney, basically. And those are also going to be potentially some of your closest confidants, because those are the people that like they are not only well versed in their craft, but they have by obligation they have to know a lot about your business, a lot about you and your personal life. So anyway, sorry to throw you off, because so we've given a little more context than maybe even needed as to why it's scary to go into business. So sorry, keep going.
So anyway, my first job choice was an actuary, because I was really good at math. Another typical Korean thing. It wasn't a doctor, it wasn't a lawyer, it wasn't an engineer, but it was kind of this thing where I needed a lot of schooling. It was a very prestigious job, very high paying. So that was like what my parents approved. So it almost was a dream that was chosen for me. And it's probably why it didn't stick, because I passed the actuary exams, and they're grueling exams. And then I even went to the University of Minnesota for a year, and I majored in mathematics and statistics, and then I flunked the heck out, Sam. It was the grind, but I didn't have the passion behind it, which is probably where I learned that you got to start with the dream and fit everything else second. So then, I I decided it wasn't for me. The university also decided education wasn't for me, and then I bounced.
Which is interesting. So what I'm hearing is, because you passed the actuary exams, you said. So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is the intelligence was there. You
Oh yeah.
willingly, to some end, because the dream wasn't there, flunked.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So essentially I burnt out. And that's a
Right.
really, really common thing in Asian households, it seems, where it's just pressure, pressure, pressure. I don't even like what I'm doing. So then I just flame out.
So
yeah.
how was that? What was that like?
Oh,
That
it
sounds like the
essentially,
first real burnout.
it was horrible. It was horrible. It was like my parents felt like they were disgraced. My parents felt horrible about it. They also paid for my first year of school. So they felt like robbed, and it essentially ended our relationship. After I flunked out of college at 19, I never saw them again, and to this day. So, so then what I had to do was get a job, and that's where my real dream of becoming a financial advisor was realized, because I got a job at 19 to be a teller at Wells Fargo, and I flippin' loved everything about it. I loved the conversation. I loved working in an institution. I loved. It was also in this really, really kind of hip part of the city of Minneapolis. It was like where all the breweries were, where all the kind of the bars were. So I loved working there. I also lived very close to there. And it was just, I was like, this is it. I want to go into finance. And it was even further kind of drilled into me because that branch had a financial advisor there. And fun story is, fun fact is, Wells Fargo was bought out by a bank based in Minnesota. But they just kept the Wells Fargo name because it was more historic. So there are Wells Fargo's
name.
Right. It's been around forever. So even though a Minnesotan bank bought it, they were like, no, we're keeping the Wells Fargo name. So so there are Wells Fargos everywhere in Minneapolis, and it's probably the biggest bank. So I was at the biggest bank in Minneapolis, at the biggest bank company, Wells Fargo, and that probably meant the financial advisors there were the most successful in Minnesota at the very least. So I just kept seeing these guys. They're like coming in with nice cars, nice suits. They were, they were working a lot when they were there, but they only showed up like 2 to 3 times a week. And I said, oh my God, how can you show up to a job only 2 to 3 times a week and make the kind of money that they make? So that's when I was like, that is going to be my job. I am going to be a financial advisor someday. Now, knowing, today I know that, man, they grinded like heck to get to that level. But that's really where I kind of saw that as a future for me.
Well, and in retrospect, I'm more curious now because maybe they did only show up a couple times a week. You tell me. But is it also possible they were meeting a lot of people the other 3 to 5 days?
So yes and no. There were advisors in that level where they really did only work 2 to 3 times a week because they had enough underlings to take care of basically everything else. And then they were just out golfing all the time and raking in the residuals. And then there were also advisors who were trying to meet business owners elsewhere, trying to do luncheons, trying to do, golf outings to generate business. So I got to really see a range of advisors.
That's fantastic. So that sparked that dream.
Yeah.
So how did you start as a financial advisor at Wells Fargo?
No. So Wells Fargo has an internal academy. Almost every big corporate bank does, where if you produce enough sales, they will put you in that academy. You have to kind of prove your sales techniques or sales ability to get
Acumen,
there.
if you will.
Acumen, if you will. And basically, it is a giant carrot that they're holding, and you are the donkey forever chasing it. They don't tell you when they say they're going to promote you into it that there's like a huge backlog. There's a bunch of seniority and politics involved, and I never got there. So I was at Wells Fargo for almost 7 years, and I decided, you know what, they've given me basically every promotion that they could give me except that Financial Advisor Academy, and I just didn't really see it coming. So I decided to look for something else. And I almost even gave up on my dream to be a financial advisor. But then I met my wife, and then we needed to move to Mississippi, which is a whole nother story there. And then when I needed to move to Mississippi because she got into med school, I started doing some job applications, and then my resume was, I put in my kind of little blurb about me. I'm an aspiring financial advisor, and then my resume had all the sales positions at Wells Fargo. So I got a ton of job offers saying, "Hey, we will put you in our internal academy. They didn't give it to you over there. We'll give it to you over here." So the institution that I ended up choosing was New York Life, and then they gave me the start. They put me in the academy right away. They paid for all my FINRA licenses. They paid for my life insurance licenses, and then they said, "Yep, go sell."
That's exciting. And so
Yeah.
that's it. So that's at Mississippi at this point?
That's in Mississippi. So I was 26 and a half. And then we had to move to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where my would Carey University. And Hattiesburg, Mississippi is kind of it's a college town. There's really only colleges there. And I started, it was a huge, huge change. So I went from super North Yankee, white, suburban life, city life of Minneapolis, which is a decent sized city, to this college town in the middle of Mississippi. I am from the South Korea. So it wasn't really the same South, it was wild. It was wild, Sam.
What's wild?
What's
wild? I don't know. I guess I don't want to make assumptions here. Can you give an example?
No, you can make every assumption about Mississippi, and they will be correct. Man, let me tell you this. So one of the first things we did when we got to Mississippi was look for a church, because Karen and I were both Christian. I didn't realize at the time, but there's a saying in Mississippi that Yankees worship from the neck up. And what that means is we're kind of sitting, we might be singing along to the worship song, but we're really, the praise is all coming from the neck up. So we go to this church, and it's kind of an old school Pentecostal church in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And all of a sudden, people start running in laps around the altar. They got the Holy Ghost in them. And then they're just going up and down the aisle around the altar. And I just looked around like, what the fudge is going on here? Like, I didn't realize I had to bring a flipping protein shake to church, or take a pre-workout before service. And I was like, this is ridiculous. People were hollering, because they were like speaking in tongues or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, this is crazy. I am stressed out. And it was the first time I got exposed. I ended up staying, believe it or not.
I believe it. You're recounting a church I went to down in Texas for me, and if I'm going to be honest, I kind of miss it a little bit.
You miss it a little bit?
Yeah, I miss it a little bit, at least for sure. The one I go to now is maybe kind of similar, but it's not what you're describing. I respect what you're describing.
Yeah. Well, it was also the first time I got exposed to preaching, fire and brimstone. So the pastor was like,
that's
"You
a radical
wretched sinner, you wretched sinner," all that stuff. And I was like, I am so stressed out
so
right
we
now.
went from worship, which is filled with the Holy Ghost, people falling over, speaking in tongues,
running
into
laps.
the sermon, which is how dare you, filthy wretches.
Yes.
Wow.
You deserve hell. If it wasn't for Jesus, you'd be going there today, kind of thing. And I was like,
what whiplash?
It was
with that, I feel like, I don't know. Yeah, that. Okay, now you're not describing something I'm as familiar with. I mean, the pastor would be passionate, but that I don't know. I'm just seeing whiplash. From that, right? Because when you're filled with the Holy Spirit, you're while you're kind of built up, right?
Yeah.
But then you're describing a sermon that talks you down. Like you went from a spirit-filled, to a back in your sinful body.
Yes.
Back.
Yes. And and it was a huge culture shock. And I just looked around and this is a very popular church. There's several hundred people here. What the F are people doing here? Because I would never come here just to be treated like this. So I never went back. So things like that were very, very shocking to me. The humidity and the heat was something I was used to in Minnesota because there's the Great Lakes and all the lakes that provide humidity in summer, but it's relatively short. But in Mississippi, it comes and it stays, and it's overwhelmingly hot, especially for somebody like me. So that was a huge challenge. Everything was so hot. I didn't really know anybody. So trying to start, that was really the first time I tried to start a business on my own, even though I was working for a company.
What brought you to Mississippi anyway? Did you say that? I'm sorry. Because I'm thinking back
wife.
on. Okay, because you mentioned that's what brought to Kansas City. Is that's also what?
Yep, the university
process?
the med school she attended was in Mississippi, and then she graduated, which is what led us to come to Kansas City. So the last kind of 4 years of my life, 4 or 5 years of my life have been dictated by my wife's career, which is part of the process. Everybody goes through it if they're marrying a physician of some sort. In any stage, at any point, you can, like now.
I've known a couple physicians too. I guess it's just. Do most physicians know that as going into school, or is that something you're kind of broadsided by?
Nobody. So it's just like starting a business, Sam. When you started your business, did anybody ever tell you how flipping hard it was going to be? All the nights you were going to cry and all the times you were going to give up.
I think they tried. Some of them probably tried to.
But you didn't understand.
No.
It's only something that you had to experience. So everybody knows going into med school, it's going to be long hours, hard work. And then, holy crap, are they slammed in the face. So our first year, Karen and her classmates, they were so sleep deprived. They couldn't study. So their solution to that was they would grab their textbooks and then bring it to the gym on campus and then read it on a treadmill and hope that the walking would keep them awake, right? So they would just try to read it and even then some of them were falling asleep, So yes, you can hear stories like that.
That's wild.
But until you experience it, oh my word, it's hard. It's really hard to understand. And of course, they don't tell spouses.
I need a
either.
prescription for Adderall just thinking about it.
Yeah, isn't that wild? That's how they used to study, bro. Like, and and I didn't do. It was a really fun time, and I didn't really do it then. But Karen would always be like, "Hey, if you want to check out like the cadavers in the lab, we can go there." Or, hey, we just opened up this disgusting thing, we can go check it out. And I was like, nope, I am way too squeamish for that. And
what a date night, Suyoung. Oh my goodness.
Wow. It was horrible. I mean, we would be
I'm thinking of a Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode now.
Yeah, we would be like in an office together. So we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Mississippi, So we would be in our office together. She would be studying, and I would be trying to like research marketing strategies or whatever. And then I would have to almost like remember, don't look that way, because she's got her textbook open. It's like, if you look that way and you see something, you're gonna regret it. So I'm like, I had to work like this next to her because I just didn't want to look at her textbook.
Oh, because the like cadaver images.
Yeah,
That makes
it's like,
sense.
oh, this infection.
Are you squeamish?
Whatever. I don't know why, but I can't really stand, like, I don't mind the sight of blood or anything like that. But if it's like, oh, look at this cancer, this like warped, infected,
like a
pus
growth
coming
or
out.
something.
Yeah, that kind of stuff I can't really handle.
The grotesque.
The grotesque.
That's probably a good word for it.
Oh,
or,
gosh. There's even it's a very popular, it's almost like a pilgrimage site for med students. There's the Museum of the Grotesque in Philadelphia. My wife has been wanting to go there for years. 50% to freak me out, and 50% because she actually finds it interesting.
Well, it's yes, because there's it really does seem like you are either on one side of the coin or the other of that.
Yeah, there's no middle ground. No,
there really isn't. Like there's like a museum. I don't think it's in Kansas City. I think it's in Chicago. There's like a museum showing off like torture devices and stuff like that. And for some reason, that stuff is kind of always fascinated me a little bit, because it's this other world. I think part of the reason it fascinates me is because it really happened, but you look at it like, what malicious mind designs this thing that is way different than the thing right next to it, yet they serve the same purpose, which is just, and it's a horrible purpose. That's like, you almost think it's like, nah, that didn't happen. It's almost like reading a fantasy book, but in real life. And then you still kind of, it's a difficult hurdle. Well, I think it's why a lot of folks will like serial killer shows.
Yeah,
it's
like forensics.
Because, I mean, on one hand, it's real, but there's like an uncanny valley or something where it's real, but your subconscious, your emotional under the covers mind doesn't accept it as being real. Yes,
I completely understand it. Growing up, for me, that was North Korea. I would watch things about North Korea, see things about real Korea, I'd be like, that's not real. Like, that's what? Like, that's a place here on Earth today? It's like, what the heck? So I understand completely that feeling.
Well, it's a fascinating example because I've seen an interview, and I don't think I didn't realize just how, like, the maps, so from my understanding, the maps that they're shown in class are basically just North Korea. And so they don't have this concept of like a whole world. I mean, I'm sure obviously at like a higher dictatorship level, I'm sure you do. But at like your average working class individual, they have a completely different idea of what planet Earth looks like.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Okay, so wow. Okay, so that's a very okay, so you're in a unique church setting in Mississippi, and you've got brought on at New York Life, which is the one that's gotten you your series licenses and whatnot, and then so I'm more, I guess, curious at this point. Are you getting business in that environment? Because now I'm thinking of, because I had neighbors that he was in med school to be a physician, and it was difficult to be neighbors with them because they knew they were leaving. And they told us they were leaving, and your average individual, I don't think, really makes friends when you're like actively trying to foster a relationship, you're trying to foster it under the notion that like we're going to know each other forever. That may not happen that way, but it's not like somebody comes up to you like, hey, by the way, next year I'm moving away to a completely different state. And it's like, well, okay,
Yeah.
we
So
can
so
drink together.
my time in Mississippi was the wilderness that the Israelites had to go through to get to the promised land. It was so difficult. And in order to be a financial advisor in Mississippi, you have to be white, and you have to be over the age of 55, and you have to be from the South. So I had it, because there's a lot of that whole good old boy mentality, like, oh, I choose who I want to go into business with based on what fraternity they went to in college, or there's all sorts of this Southern belle, Southern gentleman culture that exists in the demographic that I was trying to target, right? That kind of old money kind of demographic. So I had a heck of a time getting into doors. They just would not open for me. So in the first year, I made like almost no money. We had to live off of our savings account that I built before leaving, credit cards. We even had to borrow more student loans just to live because I could not provide. And it was...
This is kind of an interesting notion to me because you're describing like a racial profile. And what's interesting to me is that doesn't even make sense in that profile, right? Because you said it early on, you're Asian, you're stereotypically good with numbers.
Yeah.
You're describing a world where demographic racial profile is apparently key.
Yes.
You would think you would be the most successful if that's the case, but it sounds like it's this counterintuitive, self-defeating, like you said, if you didn't go to the fraternity that we went to, you're gonna struggle.
Yeah, it's all just subconscious. It's that's the way they've done it forever. So, and that's the way they're gonna continue to do it forever.
Right. Well, that's the
there's...
interesting thing about sales in general, right? Is it a lot of us, we want to think it's on a logic, but it's not.
It's never on a logic.
There's a lot of psychological documents that indicate sales and marketing is way more emotional than logic driven. It's the reason that sex still sells in commercials.
Right. Yeah. And yes. So like in the beginning, so I made absolutely no money in Mississippi, and it was really, really hard. And a part of that was also, I didn't know that what you just said. I would talk to people about, oh, this is kind of the returns. This is the money you would save. This is like the tax benefits, yada, 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 all these numbers. And it didn't resonate with anybody. Believe it or not, people do not hire financial advisors, or people do not hire me today because I'm good with the finance. It's really like, Suyoung, this stresses me out, or, this, I'm worried about my, when I talk about a retirement plan with somebody.
It's the dream. I'm worried about my children and where they're going to go and how that's going to work out for them.
Yes. And it's like, my top 5 questions that I get is, Suyoung, like, am I going to run out of money? Suyoung, if my wife gets sick in retirement, am I going to be able to take care of her? What if my husband dies before me? He was kind of the one that run the money of the family. And the overarching theme of all these questions I get are, Suyoung, am I going to be okay? Just tell me I'm going to be okay. That's really what I need you to do. I need you to go in there, do your thing, and then come back to me and tell me I'm going to be okay. But in the beginning, I didn't know anything like that. So I was...
Well, and I don't know, that's surprisingly powerful. I'm an overthinker, and so I'm going to be honest. You want to get to my heart, telling me it'll be okay goes a long way, especially in that emotional moment, right? Where you're like,
oh, yeah.
Which is no doubt at least a decent trigger to engaging a financial advisor to begin with.
Oh, yes. And where that feeling comes from of like, Suyoung, I need you to tell me that I'm going to be okay for these people planning for retirement is simply the fact that their paycheck is going to go away. So before they had some sort of security knowing, oh, I've got a good job, I've got a paycheck coming. But when I retire, that's gone. And what I got is what I got. So it just this, yes, anyway. So that kind of emotions,
How
that's really why
difficult
people hire me.
how difficult is it? Because we interviewed an accountant and she was describing tax season and the emotions involved there. You know, when you tell somebody that they owe a lot of money to the IRS or whatever. How difficult is it, and what is it like to tell people you're not okay?
Oh my gosh. So, it is the easiest thing in the world. It is the easiest thing in the world. Because
To say you're not okay?
yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm confused. Really?
absolutely. Oh, in fact, in the beginning, it like haunted me. Oh, I don't want to tell people that. But really, why people are scared or fearful or anxious is because there's a question mark in their brain. It doesn't matter what the answer is, as long as it's an answer. Because the fear was coming from the unknown kind of thing, because it was a question mark. So as soon as I tell them, hey guys, we got to get cracking because you're not going to be okay, they go, okay, we're not going to be okay. It's hard to hear, but what now, Suyoung? Like, what are the action steps we need to start taking? And it's very quick to move.
I love it's like the person that's sick and they have no idea why, and they went to three different doctors, and the fourth one was like,
I got
this
you.
is what you have, and it might be terminal even, or hopefully not, but the relief that at least I know what I have.
Yeah, the answer provides that. So I've told people bad news all the time. I will continue to tell people bad news all the time. And maybe there's an initial shock, maybe whatever, but there also seems to be a correlation of the more dread they have, the more relief they feel after they get the bad news. So yeah, for me, and at the end of the day, in my world, it's just money. You know, maybe they gotta cut tight, maybe they gotta sacrifice something. It's just money. You know, my wife has the harder job of delivering harder news to folks than I do. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, yeah, it does. It's well, it's a really interesting thing because it lends to, actually, one of the first things I thought of for some reason was, you know, when you what's a good example? I wish I had one readily available. It seems like a lot of what we see on the news is, you know, the families of victims of mysterious deaths go to great lengths to find out why and how and where.
What
they're
happened?
like, and they'll say, we know they're dead, but we want to put the body to rest. We want to know what happened. We want to know where
we want
they're
the closure.
at.
Yep.
And so you're describing a world where basically you provide that closure. You know, it's like, look, the answer may not be great, and maybe you already knew that deep down. But now, and well, what's better is it's not a dead person. It's not a victim. There is a solution here. Like, there's a track we can follow that softens or eliminates the blow.
Yeah, and even if I can't make their money better, I will make their life better. It's like, okay, you guys, I can't create something out of nothing. So maybe you don't have enough saved for retirement. Well, that simply means you gotta cut corners, or simply means you might have to think about moving in with. Nobody ever wants to become a burden to their kids, but you know, maybe don't move in with your kids. Move in with a sibling or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. There's solutions somewhere.
Yeah, there's something that you can do. You know, we live in America where there's something you can do. Yeah, and some people, I tell them, hey, you can't retire at 65. You got to retire at 75. And they go, oh my gosh, for a second. But then just having that number, they go, okay, well, I'm going to work towards it. And that, remember, the working towards the goal is the part where they get purpose and fulfillment, not necessarily the goal
Well,
itself.
that might be better anyway, because for those that don't know out there, there's a fun statistic about your life expectancy after you retire.
Yeah,
and it's
yes,
not beautiful. So
right.
it does not hurt you, even when you are financially free, to keep working.
Oh yeah, you need that purpose. You need community, you need purpose, you need to feel. That's why the whole another hard conversation I have is we need to buy some long-term care insurance for yourself. It's like, oh, I'll never go into a nursing home. That. It's like, I understand, but I understand, but your body may not let you live that way, and it's a very tough conversation of asking people to be prepared to give up their independence, because that number one fear that I mentioned, that whole I'm worried I'm going to run out of money in retirement. The only way to answer that question is to ask, how long is your retirement going to be? You retire at 65. When are you going home to Christ? I don't know. Okay, well, let's take a look at your medical history then and start trying to come up with some clues. How long did your parents live? Yada, yada, yada. So those are the questions I have. And I go, oh my gosh, your parents, they're at 99 today and they're in nursing homes. Well, chances are you're going to have that. It's like, oh, but I hate it in there, and yada, yada, yada. These are all tough conversations. But once we get the answers, once we get the solutions, it's all good.
Yeah. It's fantastic. Yeah. I mean,
I just blew your brain, Sam.
I love the different, I'm making the different layers and the connections between it all. And it is an interesting thing how it works.
Yeah.
Psychologically. It's funny. It comes back to kind of almost controversial logic. It's like, it's the last thing we want to do is consider our own mortality. But that's also the most important thing to kind of do, is make a plan for that. And then the third thing, which is once we do, we end up feeling better than if we just lived with the unknown that scares us to begin with.
Yes. And when another value that I provide is I can do it without emotion for you. When you try to do it for yourself, sometimes that emotional piece of it is you're so attached to the situation. It's very, very hard to make these objective calls and objective decisions. So having outside counsel really, really does make the situation a little bit better for clients. I could say a lot better and toot my own horn, but I won't.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same reason an attorney is so valuable. And frankly,
no
some
emotions.
of my favorite attorneys are the ones that are like, here's all the ways you can get sued.
Yeah.
And here's all the possible defenses to that. And it's like,
Yep.
whoa, you just laid it out. And then it's like,
Yes.
and here's the odds that the average person will take this direction. And here's the odds that that would be or wouldn't be successful. And it's like, and then once it's all laid out, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This one, it's the you're only lost if you don't have a map.
Yep. Yes.
And then when you have a map, it's like, sure, there might be these three monsters in front of you, but wasn't it kind of nice that you had that map and knew that? Or do you really just want to keep hanging out lost?
Yeah. So that was actually my first tagline when I first started my business. Now it's, I'm not a broker, I'm a fixer, because nobody wants to be broker with me, and you don't want to and you don't want a broker. So so everything I've talked to you about today, the comprehensive planning, brokers can't do that, because all they're there is to get you to buy stocks or sell stocks or mutual funds or policies or whatever. I am not a broker. I am a consultant, I'm a strategist, I'm a fixer. So, but my first tagline was the financial GPS, because I said, hey, and I used to use that in my elevator talk. I'd be like, hey, Suyoung, what do you do? I'd be like, oh, you know what? Hey, Sam, when you go on a road trip and you don't know the way, what's the first thing you do? And they'd be like, well, I punch the address in the GPS. And I go, well, that's what I am. I am a financial GPS for retirement. It's this great unknown. You don't know where you're going. Not only will I calculate the route for you, I'll guide you there. And if we need a reroute because there's an accident, then I'll reroute you then too, just like a GPS. So it's like, it's great to have a map. It's even better to have a guide with the map, right? So that was my first tagline, believe it or not. And I thought it was a great one. But nobody cared in Mississippi, Sam.
I care.
Yeah, thank you. The market, and I'm not saying, just the business market, has a great way of humbling you. Great way of humbling you.
Are you quoting me?
No, I'm not quoting you. But we're both business owners.
I've said verbatim that.
Oh, you've said verbatim.
Yeah. Word for word. I took a class, a business class early on. Shout out to SBDC and UMKC. I love what the folks are doing over there. And it's a small business development class or course, or anyway, I can't even think what the C stands for now that I think about it. But anyway, and the teacher, Rebecca Goebbels, shout out to Rebecca. She had this curt, direct way of handling things that I guarantee some people thought was rude. But and she might have thought I was playing teacher's pet. That really wasn't the point. But I tried to, as often as possible, like, listen to this woman, because I had just about gone through bankruptcy, and so I knew. I was like, and I said, I was like, the market. Maybe I haven't said it verbatim, but what I say is, the market is a cruel mistress.
It is a very cruel mistress.
Better to have a friend or a teacher or a mentor or a confidant that beats you up just a little bit about your mistakes or your ideas or your pricing or your disinterest in raising prices, because the market does not care about you or your feelings or your family or your home.
No, and it's always right. It's always right. So you've got this business idea and it's not clicking. You are wrong. The market is right. So you need to have, that's kind of the hardest thing about being a business owner, because we all went into business because we're type A personalities. We don't like being told what to do. We can't do a 9-to-5 W-2 job because we're too hard-headed. But man, you have to adjust quick when the market tells you no. And you can't try to force your idea, marketing idea or whatever idea, because it's not working. Customers aren't coming.
So best to have somebody there. So some wrap-up questions.
Yes.
I feel like we're kind of towards the end here. This is a pretty good spot to wind down. We have a motto over here that goes, if we have seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. Isaac Newton said, if I have seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. Who's been a giant in your life, Suyoung?
Who's been a giant in my life?
Someone you want to pay homage to in this moment.
Man, it's there's a lot, but I would say the first one I'm thinking of is my first spiritual mentor. Shout out to Dr. Rivard in a little church in Mississippi at New Life. So he was the one that really took my faith to the next level, because it really, everything is revolved around my faith. So he's kind of the guy that I'm thinking of right now. And he used to be, so he was a psychologist for a very, very long time. And when I met with him, and he was my spiritual mentor, he would be like, this is how the brain works, and this is how the faith works. And you need to make sure both work together. Otherwise, you are not going to make it in life. And one thing he used to tell me all the flippant time, because I was, business wasn't doing well. I was stressed. My marriage was a ton of stress. He used to tell me all the time, none of that matters. If you want to have a positive life, think positive thoughts. because your thoughts need to rule the direction of your life. And right now, you're letting your feelings lead instead of your thoughts. And every time he said that, I just wanted to smack the crap out of him, right? There he was. He was I think he was 70 something at the time, just telling me, oh, Suyoung, you want a positive life? Just think positive thoughts, bro. And I was like, oh, that is such a thing to hear when I'm going through it. But it was right. It was right. And another thing he used to tell me all the time was, Suyoung, don't try to go around it. You got to go through it. That's the quickest way. That is the quickest way. Don't go around. Just go through. And so it was, he is a humongous giant. And I didn't even just stand on his shoulders. He probably threw me, and he carried me through the hard times in Mississippi.
That's beautiful. I feel like I do need to note too. One thing I've noticed a lot on this podcast is that the valley is where people discover the desert is where people discover their, like I heard a scenario where the core values discovered in the valley, what matters to them, the giants, so if you're going through a valley, know that you're probably going to learn the most impactful lesson of your life.
So for me, the valley is the crucible, where metals are melted down in this incredible heat to get all the impurities out. And then in that liquid metal form, it gets put into the mold. I'm thinking about a sword specifically. And then, after that, it's not even done. You know what they do to the sword? They hammer the crap out of it, right? So I call Mississippi my time in the crucible. And it's where I was tested. My marriage was tested. My will to have a business was tested. Because I wanted to quit so bad every day in Mississippi and go find a normal job. And people that believed in me actually said, you know what, Suyoung, New York life isn't for you. I think you should meet these other folks. And they introduced me to BSG Advisors. And that's how I got started with them and how I bought into my firm today. I just wanted to quit every freaking day. And I probably did quit. It's just that my wife wouldn't let me, my peers wouldn't let me, and stuff like that. And now we're unbreakable. My marriage is unbreakable. My business is unbreakable just because I went through that incredibly hard season.
So the last question is, and maybe you've answered this a little bit already, but what is a guiding principle that you found to be true again and again and again? This might be your pithy saying or your own mantra or that thing that's like.
So I have two now. The first one is you only fail when you quit. So don't quit. Just keep going one more day. Business, a lot of people think business is thing about succeeding, but really it's a game of survival. If you just last long enough, if you just simply last long enough in business, you will have a successful business. So don't try to succeed, just try to survive. And then once you have that foundation, then maybe you can start thinking about other things. But, I'm going to celebrate my 4th year anniversary as an independent advisor this April. This is the first year that I feel like, oh my God, I'm now looking forward to the success, because the first 3 years were so hard. That's one of my mantras is you only fail when you quit. The second one I heard very recently, and it's been so powerful, is everybody is jealous of what you got, but they're never jealous of how you got it. They're never jealous of how you got it. So always remember that piece. I not to be because my wife is 99% of the reason I'm still in business, but it's like, man, the things that I've had to go through to stay in business, to stay married, I don't want to repeat it. And I'm definitely not jealous of anyone else that has to go through it. But man, what I've now got on the other side of that, holy buckets. I would not trade it for anything in the world.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate you joining us today. Suyoung, how can people connect with you?
They can simply Google me, my name, or my firm, or they could even simply Google financial advisor in Overland Park. And my firm is like the top 1 or top 2 result. And there I will be. They can check out my reviews, see what my clients have to say about me, and then they can shoot me an email or something. But that's been 90% of my efforts, is trying to get ranked high on Google. Are you testing it out right now, Sam?
I might be.
Test it out for me. Because I haven't tested it with anybody in North Kansas City. Google Financial Advisor.
It's different by location, so we
Yeah.
can talk about it after.
Oh,
Thank you so much for joining me, Suyoung. And let's have a bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much. God bless y'all.
Hello, everybody. I wanted to thank you for listening to today's episode. It's such a blessing to be able to interview such fantastic individuals. If you're interested in listening to more, we look to post every Thursday at 10 a.m. You can find us on YouTube, Amazon Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Thanks so much. Have a blessed day.